This is Mrs. Naslund, and today we'll be looking at Unit 7, Lesson 4, just under quotient digits. Our learning target for today is, I can determine the correct size multiplier for a division quotient. That sounds pretty complicated, but as we dig in, you'll see that it's not as complicated as it seems. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to discuss this puzzled penguin problem. It says, the puzzled penguin started to solve this division problem. He knew he had a problem, so his friends suggested different ways to fix it. So first I want us to look at this problem real carefully, and I want you to think, what is the problem with this division problem? So go ahead and look at it, and then I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to see if we can figure it out. So what is the problem with penguins? What was the puzzled penguin's problem? So I look at it, and I'm going to go through my steps, okay? First I'm going to do my divide step. So I say 4 into 34, and they said 7. And when they multiplied the mommy step, 4 times 7, they get 28, which is right. And they did the sister subtract, and they got 6. But when I look at this, 6 is bigger than 4. 4 can still go into 6. So there's a problem here, right? There's a problem. It doesn't work because I can actually fit more 4s into 34 than just 7. I could fit 8 in there, okay? So let's look at these different solutions and see which one of them works. So here's what one of his friends suggested. It said, Jacob suggested that he erase the 7 and write an 8 in its place. He would also need to erase the calculation and do them over. So let's try that. If I say 4 times 8, I get 32, and then he subtracts it and he gets this 2, okay? 4 can't go into 2. So then I would start and I would do my bring it down step, and I'd able to bring the 7 down, and I could continue with my division problem. All right, so does that one work? Yeah, it does. Now let's look at this one. Fred told him to cross out the 7 and write 8 above it. He would then subtract 1 more 4. All right. So we already talked about that we knew it needed to be 8 because we knew that I could put 1 more set of 4 into that 34, right? 4 times 7 is 28, but again, I got that 6, and I can still fit a 4 in there. I can fit 1 more 4 into that number. So instead of it being 7, it is 8. But when I multiply it then, I end up with a total of 32, and I don't quite understand why I have to subtract this 4. But if you think about it, the difference between the 32 that I should have got and the 28 is exactly 4. So if I subtract this 4, what do I end up getting? I end up getting a total of 2. And I want you to look. If I get a 2 here, look, it's the same 2 here. So if I would bring down, in this case, if I bring down this 7, I have a 7 here, and if I brought down this 7, do I end up with the same number? I do. My next step would be to divide 4 into 27. So this one works as well, okay? They both work. Instead of just one of them working, both of them work. Now, there are different ways of coming to the same conclusion, but they both would work, all right? So that's what we call the puzzled penguin problem, looking at and figuring out our mistakes. A really common mistake kids make when they do division is that they end up with a quotient that is too small. They think, oh, 28, perfect. But if you think about it, if I add 4 more on, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, I could have gotten another number in there, and so it's wrong. And the way to catch that mistake is that if you look here when you subtract, if this number is bigger than your divisor, then it doesn't work. You made a mistake. This number should always be smaller than your divisor. Okay, so that's a very common mistake that 4th graders make when they first learn long division. So I want you to recognize that mistake, and I want you to check your work as you go. Again, if when you subtract, this number is bigger than the divisor, you have a mistake somewhere. All right, good. Let's go on. Now we're going to talk about why zeros are needed in the quotient. Okay, So we're going to go ahead and solve these division problems like we would solve any division problem. And we're going to go ahead and do our steps. Again, first we're going to divide. We're going to do daddy. I go 6 into 18, and right away I know that that's 3. All right, so I write my 3. And then I do my mother step. I multiply. 6 times 3 is 18. All right. And then I do my sister step and I subtract. I get 0. And then I do my brother step and I bring it on down this 4. All right. And then I either repeat or remainder, but since I brought something down, I have to repeat. So I'm going to do 6 into 4. Now, does 6 go into 4? How many times does 6 go into 4? It goes in 0 times, right? You can't put 6 into 4. You can only put numbers into bigger numbers than what it is. So I have to put a 0. If I didn't put that 0 there as a holder, I would end up with a totally different answer. If it doesn't go in, it's a 0. Okay, it's needed in order to get the correct quotient. So now I keep going. 6 times 0 is 0. Now I subtract. I get 4. And now I bring down the next number, which is 2. Bring it on down. And then since I brought a number down, I'm going to repeat. I'm going to go ahead and divide 6 into 42. So 6 goes into 42 7 times. And then I go ahead and do my multiply. 6 times 7 is 42. And then I do my subtract, sister, and it was 0. And there's nothing to bring down, so then I have a remainder of 0. Okay, so again, that 0 placeholder is really important because if I wouldn't have had it, I would have got an answer of 37. And obviously, 6 goes into 1,842 way more than 37 times. Okay, so when you divide in, if you get a 0, you have to write the 0 is needed in the quotient to get the correct answer. Lastly, we're going to look at being able to choose between using calculations and using mental math. So we're going to talk through this, and then we're going to go through a couple scenarios and decide if it's a mental math type of problem or a problem that I'd want to use a calculation for. So it says, some people have numbers that are easy to work with mentally. Other problems are easy to solve using pencil and paper or a calculator. So first, mental math. First thing we want to do is look at the numbers are easy to work with mentally. Okay, and I'll read an example here. There are 150 ribbons to be handed out at the school field day. There are 30 events, and the same number of ribbons will be awarded at each event. How many ribbons will be given out at each event? So first off, I'm going to know that this is a mental problem because these problems are multiples of 10. They have zeros at the end. Okay, and when I see that, there's the same number of zeros in each of these, and I can just cross them out. Okay, I can cross them out for my calculations here, and I can say, okay, I know what I'm supposed to divide 150 divided by 30, but really, since I have the two multiples of 10 there, I'm going to cross them out, and I only have to divide 15 divided by 3, and the answer is 5. All right, and guess what? It works that way. If I would take 30 times 5, I'm going to end up with 150. So it's easy when you can just cross off those zeros, do the division, and get your answers right away. That's easy to do mentally. But if I look at like this next one, let's look at a calculation problem. Here's an example. Last month, Mandy was in school for 132 hours. She spent 6 hours in school each day. How many days did she go to school? Well, that's a lot more difficult. I can't easily divide 6 into 132. So in this case, I would have to actually write out my long division or use a calculator to solve it, okay? Because the numbers don't end in zeros. They're not easy to calculate. So my question for you is, let's look at these next two problems and decide if these are ones that are easy calculations or ones that are not so easy calculations. And I would need to do long division for. So let's look at the first one here. Although the members of the exercise club drink 900 bottles of water each month, each member drinks 10 bottles. How many members are there? Okay, altogether, I'm going to read that again. Altogether, the members of the exercise club drink 900 bottles of water each month. Each member drinks 10 bottles. How many members are there? So I want you to pause it. I want you to think about, can I do this problem mentally, or do I need to do long division for it? All right, if you said mentally, you're correct, because again, you look, both of these end in 0. So I literally could cross off the 2 zeros. So I cross off this 1 0 there, and I can cross off 1 0 here. And I think to myself, okay, what's 90 divided by 1? And when I do 90 divided by 1, I get 90, right? So I was able to figure that out in a second in my head. How about this one? Juan ran 270 miles, or 270 minutes in 6 days, 270 minutes in 6 days. He ran the same number of minutes each day. How many minutes did he run each day? All right, so think about, you have to do 270 divided by 6. Can you easily calculate that one in your head? Great question. Go ahead and pause and think about it. All right, let's see. If I look at it, this one has a 0 at the end, but this one doesn't. And I think, well, 6 goes into 27. It doesn't go in equally, right? 6 times nothing equals 27. So it's not as easy as it looks. Okay, you would actually have to do the calculations to check this one. The answer ends up being 45 minutes. But because 6 doesn't go equally into 27, it's not a really easy problem to do. Okay, so again, today we talked about making sure that you can go back and check your work. We talked about that when you divide your number in, that when you subtract, this number should always be smaller than the divisor. Okay. We also talked about the importance of the zeros in the quotient placeholder, that you want to make sure that if you end up dividing it and you get 0, you want to make sure you write that 0, or you're going to end up with the wrong answer. And lastly, we talked about the difference between using your calculations, your long division, and the times when you can just use mental math to figure it out. So thanks for tuning in today, and you can go ahead and get started on your homework.